Hello children, how are you? I hope you all are fit and fine. Well, I'm Satinder Kaur and today I'll be taking up lesson 2 of Democratic Politics for class 9 and the name of the lesson is Constitutional Design. Children, if you remember in the previous lesson, you read about democracy and learned that in a democracy, rulers are elected by the people. But they are not free to do what they like. There are certain basic rules which the government and the citizens have to follow. All such rules are called constitution. As supreme law of the country, constitution determines the rights of citizens, the powers of the government and also specifies how the government should function. Now the question is, how are the constitutions drawn up? Who designs them and in what way? Our today's lesson is all about that. We shall cover this lesson in two parts. In the first part, we shall talk about South Africa, one of the recent democracies in the world, and see how the people of South Africa designed a constitution for their country. So let's begin. First, I would like you to take a look at this picture. Children, do you recognize who this gentleman is? He is Mr. Nelson Mandela, first black president of South Africa. Want to know more about him? Let's hear a few words. I have fought against white domination and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it's an ideal for which I am prepared to die. These were Nelson Mandela's words during a trial. He was tried for treason by the white South African government. Children, treason means causing harm to your country by helping its enemies. Before becoming the president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela was struggling against the apartheid regime in the country and for that he was tried on treason charges. He and 7 other leaders were sentenced to life imprisonment in 1964 and he had to spend 28 years of his life in South Africa's most dreaded prison, Robben Island. Now let's try to understand what apartheid was. Apartheid was the name of a system of racial discrimination which was imposed on South Africa by the white Europeans. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the trading companies from Europe occupied it with arms and force. In the same way, they occupied India. But unlike India, a large number of whites had settled in South Africa and became the local rulers. The system of apartheid divided the people and labeled them on the basis of their skin color. The native people of South Africa were about 3/4 of the population and were called blacks. Besides these two groups, there were people of mixed races who were called colored and people who migrated from India. The white rulers treated all non-whites as inferiors. The non-whites did not have voting rights. The apartheid system was particularly oppressive for the blacks. They were forbidden from living in white areas. They could work in white areas only if they had a permit. Trains, buses, taxis, hotels, hospitals, schools and colleges, libraries, cinema halls, theatres, beaches, swimming pools, public toilets were all separate for the whites and blacks. This was called segregation. Children, look at this picture. It is a signboard on Durban Beach written in English Afrikaans and Zulu. It says that this bathing area is reserved for whites. The blacks could not even visit the churches where the whites worshipped. Blacks could not form associations or protest against the terrible treatment. Here we have another signboard which clearly shows the tense relations between the whites and the other groups. Now, since 1950, the blacks, colored and Indians had been fighting against the apartheid system. They had been launching protest marches and strikes. The African National Congress was the umbrella organization that led the struggle against the policies of segregation. This included many workers' unions and the Communist Party. Many sensitive whites also joined the ANC to oppose apartheid and played a leading role in this struggle. Several countries denounced apartheid as unjust and racist, but the white racist government continued to rule. Thousands of black and colored people were detained, tortured and killed. Now, as protests and struggles against apartheid had increased, the government realized that they could no longer keep the blacks under their rule through repression. The white regime changed its policies. Discriminatory laws were repealed, ban on political parties and restrictions on the media were lifted. After 28 years of imprisonment, Nelson Mandela walked out of the jail as a free man. Finally, at the midnight of 26th April 1994, the new national flag of the Republic of South Africa was unfurled, marking the newly born democracy in the world. The apartheid government came to an end, paving way for formation of a multiracial government. Now, how did this come about? Let's hear Nelson Mandela, the first president of South Africa, on this extraordinary transition.
We commit ourselves to the construction of a complete, just and lasting peace. We understand it still that there is no easy road to freedom. We know it well that none of us acting alone can achieve success. We must therefore act together as a united people for national reconciliation, for nation building, for the birth of a new world. Let there be justice for all. Let there be peace for all. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign.
Wasn't it inspiring, children? If you want to know more about Nelson Mandela, you can read his autobiography, The Long Walk to Freedom. And yes, you will be reading a part of it in your English book in class 10. Now, after the emergence of the new democratic South Africa, black leaders appealed to fellow blacks to forgive the whites for the atrocities they had committed while in power. They said, let's build a new South Africa based on equality of all races and men and women, on democratic values, social justice and human rights. The party that ruled through oppression and brutal killings and the party that led the freedom struggle sat together to draw up a common constitution. After 2 years of discussion and debate, they came out with one of the finest constitutions the world has ever had. This constitution gave to its citizens the most extensive rights available in any country. Together, they decided that in search for a solution to the problems, nobody should be excluded, no one should be treated as a demon. They agreed that everybody should become part of the solution, whatever they might have done or represented in the past. The preamble to the South African Constitution sums up this spirit. The South African Constitution inspires Democrats all over the world. A state denounced by the entire world till 1994 as the most undemocratic one is now seen as a model of democracy. What made this change possible was the determination of the people of South Africa to work together to transform bitter experiences into the binding glue of a rainbow nation. Children, South Africans call themselves a rainbow nation. Can you guess why? I want you to write about it in your own words. I'm sure you will be able to do that. Speaking on the South African Constitution, Mandela said, "The Constitution of South Africa speaks of both the past and the future. On the one hand, it is a solemn pact in which we as South Africans declare to one another that we shall never permit a repetition of our racist, brutal and repressive past. But it is more than that. It is also a charter for the transformation of our country into one which is truly shared by all its people. A country which, in the fullest sense, belongs to all of us, black and white, women and men." Now let's move ahead and see why we need a constitution. Children, the South African example is a good way to understand why we need a constitution and what do constitutions do. The oppressor and the oppressed in this new democracy were planning to live together as equals. It was not going to be easy for them to trust each other. They had fears. They wanted to safeguard their interests. The black majority was keen to ensure that the democratic principle of majority rule was not compromised. They wanted substantial social and economic rights. The white minority was keen to protect its privileges and property. After long negotiations, both parties agreed to a compromise. The whites agreed to the principle of majority rule and that of one person, one vote. They also agreed to accept some basic rights for the poor and the workers. The blacks agreed that majority rule would not be absolute. They agreed that the majority would not take away the property of the white minority. This compromise was not easy. How was this compromise going to be implemented? Even if they managed to trust each other, what was the guarantee that this trust will not be broken in the future? The only way to build and maintain trust in such a situation is to write down some rules of the game that everyone would abide by. These rules lay down how the rulers are to be chosen in future. These rules also determine what the elected governments are empowered to do and what they cannot do. Finally, these rules decide the rights of the citizen. These rules will work only if the winner cannot change them very easily. This is what the South Africans did. They agreed on some basic rules. They also agreed that these rules will be supreme, that no government will be able to ignore these. This set of basic rules is called a constitution. Constitution making is not unique to South Africa. Every country has diverse groups of people. Their relationship may not have been as bad as that between the whites and the blacks in South Africa, but all over the world, people have differences of opinion and interests. Whether democratic or not, most countries in the world need to have these basic rules. This applies not just to governments. Any association needs to have its constitution. It could be a club in your area or a cooperative society or a political party. They all need a constitution. Thus, The constitution of a country is a set of written rules that are accepted by all people living together in a country. Constitution is the supreme law that determines the relationship among people living in a territory called citizens and also the relationship between the people and government. A constitution does many things. First, it generates a degree of trust and coordination that is necessary for different kind of people to live together. Second, it specifies how the government will be constituted, who will have the power to take which decisions. Third, it lays down limits on the powers of the government and tells us what the rights of the citizens are. And fourth, it expresses the aspirations of the people about creating a good society. All countries that have constitutions are not necessarily democratic, but all countries that are democratic will certainly have constitutions. After the War of Independence against Britain, the Americans gave themselves a constitution. After the Revolution, the French people approved a democratic constitution. Since then, it has become a practice in all democracies to have a written constitution. With this, we come to the end of today's lesson. I hope you understood it well. Now, let's take up a few questions. First, we have some questions with options and you have to choose the correct option. The first question is, apartheid in South Africa was discrimination on the basis of, and the options are gender, religion, race or economic status. And the answer is yes, race. The second question is, on what charges was Nelson Mandela sentenced to life imprisonment? And the options are for treason, for breaking the laws, for corruption or for fighting. And the correct option is yes, for treason. Now the third question, what did the white minority in South Africa want from the new constitution? And your options are protection of its privileges and property, a separate country for themselves, reservation in legislature or some special rights. And the correct option is protection of its privileges and property. Now the next question, which of the following sentences is correct? And the options are, all countries that have constitutions are necessarily democratic. All countries that are democratic necessarily have constitutions. No country can function without a constitution. Or all of the above. And the correct option is yes, all countries that are democratic necessarily have constitutions. Now the fifth question, which of these did not form a part of the changed policies of the South African government? And the options are, discriminatory laws were repealed, ban on political parties was lifted, Nelson Mandela was freed from imprisonment, or more discriminatory laws were passed. And the correct option is more discriminatory laws were passed. Now the sixth question, what does a constitution do? And the options are, it generates trust among different kind of people. It lays down limits on the powers of the government. It specifies how the government will be constituted, or all of the above. And the correct option is yes, all of the above. Now let's move ahead and answer these questions in 1 or 2 words. And the first question is, who had imposed the system of apartheid in South Africa? And the answer is the white Europeans. The second question is, when did South Africa become a democratic country? And the answer is 26th April 1994. Now let's move on to the third question. What were the native people of South Africa called? And the answer is blacks. The next question. Name the autobiography of Nelson Mandela. And the answer to this question is The Long Walk to Freedom. Now the fifth question. Name the organization that led the struggle against the policies of segregation. And the answer to this question is African National Congress. Very good. So children, with this we come to the end of today's video. I'm sure you liked it and got to know a great deal about the system of apartheid in South Africa and how people of South Africa struggled against this oppressive system and established democracy in their country, and further how they went about the task of designing their constitution. We also talked about the need for a constitution. We shall carry this lesson forward in our next video and talk about making of the Indian Constitution. That's all for now, children. I shall be back with the second part of the lesson very soon. Till then, stay happy, stay healthy.